All right, so today I'm going to talk to you about how to turn your tax bill into six-figure cash flow, and we're going to do that by installing a $25 million family wealth system in just 6 weeks. On this graph here, you're going to see someone making $350,000 per year, and this is over a 30-year career. You'll see that over the course of their career, they'll actually be paying an extra $1 million in taxes if they don't apply advanced tax saving strategies. So that's about $300,000 every 10 years, or $30,000 a year, and that's kind of at the minimum range. So tax savings is probably why you're here, and it's going to be a massive, massive factor in leveling up your finances. But what most people don't realize is that if you reinvest those tax savings, you can actually turn that $1 million in saved taxes into $30 million of net worth. And this is how you leap an entire wealth bracket in a single generation, by reinvesting those tax savings into high-performing deals. Once you have that family legacy, you need to protect it by installing all of the legal strategies and structures that these types of families have in place. Now, most clients, what they do is instead of trying to speed their way over to that $30 million in net worth, they focus on automating 6 figures per year. And this can be done within 5 to 7 years, sometimes even faster, depending on your current situation. And so this means automating $100,000, $200,000, sometimes $300,000 worth of annual income just based on smart investing and tax savings. So the basic system that we're going to be following is actually about how to design the life you love. And it just so happens that financial automation makes everything else easy. So obviously it starts with wealth creation, which is what you've already done for yourself. Then it goes into tax strategy, which is going to make everything else that you do much more efficient. Then we go into asset protection, which is how to make sure that you avoid hard resets from wiping you out. Then from there, we want to automate everything so that you start to get your time out. And of course, you're going to want to put all of this into estate planning and other generational wealth tools so that your kids can benefit from all the hard work you've done. And at that point, you're going to go into personal fulfillment, where you now have that financial automation funding you so that you can go explore your intellectual pursuits, social pursuits, health, emotional, and spiritual well-being. If you're making over $350,000 a year, this is going to be a great fit. If you're making less than that, you may actually have some trouble just because the tax savings may be lower than we would like. We normally try to pay for ourselves within at least the first year, and ideally within a 2 to 3 year turnaround. You should have at least $100,000 to invest. If you don't have any free capital, you just aren't going to be able to build any momentum, and you're going to be waiting for a couple years just to get things kicked off with tax savings. If you're going to work with us, you should be focused on paying for the best holistic solution and not just trying to scoop up a cheap tax strategy. In terms of your life situation, you should be in a stable situation and ready to optimize your financial life. You shouldn't be going through divorces, lawsuits, bankruptcies, job changes, buying houses. All of these things, they're not necessarily deal breakers, but they're going to add a lot of complexity, especially to the legal side, and it could impact what we are able to do for you. And again, it could just add a couple of years to that timeline. Now, this process works across all different types of income earners. So you can see W-2 employees, business owners, medical professionals, real estate investors, capital gains, and the tax savings typically range from $20,000 all the way up through low 6 figures. It can just keep going up and up and up. Jeff Allen, he's a W-2 guy, and he does a lot of investing on his own. He had an apartment complex that he had invested in and was having a big payday that would have been a large 6-figure capital gains event. And so he was looking for someone to help him offset those taxes.
Taxes are the biggest thing that weighs you down in the wealth growth stage. But I didn't really understand it till I can see the effects of how much taxes I would have paid that I was able to then mitigate and roll into like a whole other investment and be able to use that capital to continue to grow.
We were able to help him save $150,000 in capital gains and then $30,000 a year just on his W-2. We employed a bunch of different strategies, syndication investments with advanced bonus depreciation, private foundations, real estate professional, etc. Daniel Ramsey is a serial entrepreneur. He owns My Outdesk and some other businesses. He's also a realtor, and we helped him pay 0 in tax and 3 times his portfolio with the correct legal structuring and tax structuring.
The idea of having one LLC and being able to transact multiple different transactions inside of that LLC, individualized and protected so that each asset is separately classed, not worrying about the accounting and all the different, entity creations. It was very transparent.
Paige Panzarello lost millions in the crash of 2007 and then went through the process of rebuilding everything, first using note transactions, and then more recently, she's been getting into self-storage units.
There was all kinds of different entity formations that offer a variety of benefits, but it just didn't seem like there were all in one package until I discovered you, Scott.
Now, Sean Keiss is actually on kind of the lower end of the income distribution. He's a firefighter doing great at the investing game and adding 2 to 3 different rentals per year to his portfolio. His kids are around college age and he's teaching them the family business, trying to get them into real estate as well.
We kind of seen a light that this could be more than just a supplementation and we could really build some wealth with this. I wish I would have known this stuff 20 years ago. So that's kind of what we're doing with our boys.
And then of course, Dixon Kirkland is actually retired, also in the real real estate game. You don't have to be in real estate. That's just one of the many different types of investments and strategies that you can use. But in this case, Dixon's adding 2 investments a year and also getting his whole family into the Royal ecosystem because it's so effective even for retirees.
What I'm trying to do is concentrate on my real estate business and then have someone work along with me. And that's what you guys bring to the table. Having that person behind you that's keeping you organized makes life easier.
We actually have 3,000 clients nationwide now. We also have written 10 books. And of course, we've done hundreds of media appearances across the years with Bigger Pockets, Grant Cardone, Ron Cleef. The reality is that nobody here wants to learn about tax, legal, and investing. It's just we so happen to find ourselves in the situation where those have become necessary things to learn. Let's take a look at the bigger model behind this whole thing, the 3 peaks of success. The first one is the peak of wealth. And so this is what you've already climbed if you're watching this video, and congratulations. You're in the top 5%, maybe even 1% of earners worldwide. What you're most likely experiencing at this point is that things are awesome, and also there's some problems. Our founder, Scott Smith, he grew up in a single mother home, and money was always top of mind for him, so he's extremely entrepreneurial. He realized that he needed to become an attorney because of the financial security of that life path, paid his way through law school by flipping a business. And of course, once you get through this peak, you start to see what is next on the to-do list, and that's, of course, freedom. Now, this is where you decouple your income from your time and location. Scott actually solved this. He went to Africa, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and around that time was when he had a buddy call him from college. He had a lawsuit, and even though he had great insurance, the insurance didn't cover it, and it spilled over into his entire portfolio and wiped out $3 million, a single lawsuit. Then around the same time, Scott's CPA called him and told him, hey, Scott, unfortunately, we've run out of depreciation, and you're going to get slammed with a big old tax bill this year. Sorry, we just didn't see that coming. So he came back, and he came up with the concept then of durable financial freedom. That's really what the second peak is about. You need to get yourself out of the income game, and you need to do it in a way where you're truly safe. Once you establish that durable financial freedom, that's where we start to explore what does happiness mean to you? How are you going to design your social life? What's your health going to look like? What kind of hobbies and adventures are you going to go on? And this is where you get into the spiritual disciplines. You can have all the money in the world, you can have all the time in the world, and you can still be lonely and depressed. That happens to the best of us. Scott actually ran into that. He was in Costa Rica on a spiritual retreat, had a bunch of friends around him, looking out across this beautiful sunset on the ocean, and was just like, what is the point of all of this? And of course, Scott has an entire system around this as well. It's called Royal Life, and that's where he tackles mindset mastery. So we're not going to worry about that. We're actually going to dive into the second peak. What we're really trying to do is how to automate 6 figures a year. Everybody's typically heard of the nest egg approach, and this is where you stockpile cash to cover you for like 20 years so that you can like age in peace and then die before all the cash is gone. If you're making $300,000 a year, you need to live on $100,000 a year. You need to save $100,000 a year, and then the other $100,000 you'll be paying that in taxes. So if you just repeat this model for 60 years, you now have enough money to live for about 20 years at that $300,000 lifestyle. And of course, out of pocket, that means you've got to generate about $6 million. So not real great, but a lot of people, this is the best model that they know how to do. Then we get into the passive income game, and this is where we talk about real estate. But what it really means is you're going to buy yourself a second job. Basically, you're going to put $100,000 down on a rental property, and that's going to allow you to make $5,000 a year. Now, once you pay the property off, this will go way, way up, but that's going to take a while, right? In the first year, you'll be able to save an extra $15,000 on taxes, and all you have to do in this case is just buy and manage 40 rentals yourself. If you don't manage it yourself, if you have a property manager, now all of a sudden your profitability goes down. This is a much more efficient path. You can see your out of pocket is only $3 million in this case, but you're going to be stuck working this, or your profit is severely going to get hit. The model that we're going to be going through today is what we call income automation, and this is where you reinvest tax savings and you do it into scalable investment models. So you're going to invest $100,000 to crowdfund an entrepreneur with an existing business. This is going to allow you to make $15,000 a year, and you're also going to be able to save $30,000 in taxes in year 1. You only have to place 20 investments, and there's no management involved. For just $2 million, you can hit that same financial trajectory of $300,000 a year for 20 years. This is the path we prefer because it's the most efficient. Just bottom line, this is how you accelerate as fast as possible. Now, remember those peaks. This is like if you were to zoom in on second peak, what does it actually look like? What are the pieces that you have to put into place? Now, at the very bottom, what you're going to see is a bunch of different structures. In order to execute this game plan, you're going to need to have different types of investments, stocks or real estate properties or private investments. You're going to need to have tax shelters, LLCs, and trusts to protect your assets, and an estate planning system. You're going to need to have all of those in place, and really they should all work together. Now, when you're shopping around, most of the people are going to talk to you about these things as if they're real strategies, but that's not the case. A strategy is what takes those and turns them into a cohesive game plan. And so you'll see that on the strategy level, you need your financial strategy about how you manage manage your portfolio. You need your tax strategy about how you save taxes, and you need your legal strategy about how to protect your assets and pass all of that down to your kids and make sure your family is protected. All three of those strategies need to be integrated into a single comprehensive unified strategy, which means that whatever firm you're working with actually needs mastery over all three domains. If you try to plug and play three different firms together, now you are going to be the mastermind architect because they're all going to fight about which strategies to use, and you're the one calling the shots. Strategies are great, but a lot of times what we see is clients will buy strategies, then they go up on the shelf for 20 years. So what you really need is a support layer. You need someone to be able to hold your hand and move you through the strategies. There's certain things that you and only you can do, so these firms can't actually execute everything for you, but they can help motivate you, guide you, and make your life a lot easier. But last but not least, what you really need is someone who's going to be watching your back and making sure that you're actually making money. And this is so often missed out. Even at the very highest level, a lot of times they're going to be looking at protecting or preserving your money, but not really helping you achieve true, durable financial freedom. Up until this point, you have scaled the ladder of success by building out a network and developing skill sets and working really, really hard. In peak 2, you're going to go into a totally different scope of problem. You now need to master tax, legal, and investing, and you need all of those three things to be fully integrated together. And you have to stay up to date on constantly changing tax and legal codes. Obviously, this is extremely hard, and this is the problem that most people find themselves in. At $300,000 or more in income, you're making almost as much money as a professional athlete. However, professional athletes step into an ecosystem where they have personal trainers and nutritionists and attorneys and CPAs. Everything is there to support that athlete so that they can go out and make money. They don't have to worry about all the complexities. In your case, you don't have nearly that infrastructure, so you are actually working inside of the business of your life. You're the revenue stream, but also you're developing your own financial plan, and you're trying to figure out, okay, which teams should I bring in to help me do this? Should I get a CPA? Should I get a CFP? And then, of course, you're trying to figure out what the build needs to look like. You didn't even know there was a build. You were just trying to get a financial plan, and now people are talking to you about LLCs and tax shelters, and it's kind of crazy, right? And who do you need to talk to about that? Now you got to go vet attorneys, and then, of course, you need to fund that whole strategy to get everything working. Remember, $1 million in saved taxes can turn into $30 million if you play the investment game right. So just think about the opportunity cost. You're losing about $1 million a year. It took us 10 years and $10 million to build out this system. So this is a no joke kind of problem. So how do you actually solve this? Well, you need to become the CEO of your own business. You become the funding mechanism. You put the money into the company, and the company needs to kick you back money out. That's as simple as it needs to be. You set the vision, figure out where you're going, and then you just make sure that people are hitting your financial deadlines. So you're going to build what we call a wealth company. That wealth company is going to install your financial team, your CPA and CFO. It's going to install your legal team, your attorney, your paralegals, all the stuff that you need to build out whatever financial plan that you create. And of course, it's going to give you access to investments that are high quality, that you actually have a chance to make some real money with. You can see here that you're paying that wealth company some of your tax savings. So you're going to lose money on the front end, but what they should be able to do is produce investment returns for you. So step 1 is you're going to plan your tax savings. The goal here is to pay 0 to 10 in taxes, or at least have that option. Now, to pay 0 to 10 in taxes, you are going to have to shift money around. You're going to have to place investments. You're going to have to put money into tax shelters. That's unavoidable. There's no such thing as free money. But what you can do is you can plan your money to be very smart and to work for you. And so that's what tax planning is all about. You need to install a level 4 CPA and a family wealth CFO. They're going to do all the financial modeling for you. What's going to come out of that is a tax and portfolio plan, your financial strategy that you're going to follow. So let's just walk through the different levels of providers. Your local providers typically are like a level 2 provider, and your tax bracket's going to be upwards of 25% if you work with them. Then in the second column, you have your online providers. These are what we call level 3 providers. They're actually going to introduce you to some pretty advanced strategies, and they'll be able to get your taxes into the 15 to 25% range typically. And then, of course, you're going to have your level 4 providers. Now, these are what we call family offices, and you're not really going to be able to find these guys online, or if you do, they're going to be very, very expensive. So typically, they're not accessible to families under $25 million of net worth, but they will be able to get you down to 0 to 15% in taxes. Everybody's going to be doing your basic tax strategy. So they'll talk to you about things like home office deductions and, solo 401ks. They'll also throw in some business strategies. So like, oh, you can pay your kids, or we can set up this S corporation. Typically, these are not going to work that well for W-2s. It's normally going to be very favored towards entrepreneurs and business owners. That's where we get into the level 3 guys. They are going to talk to you about real estate. If you become a real estate owner, you get access to a bunch of other options, real estate professional, short-term rentals, which actually could even work for W-2s, advanced bonus depreciation, the Augusta rule. This is where you can really start to move the tax savings if you're willing to go out and do that extra work. But of course, then you have to be a real estate owner. And if you and your spouse are full-time W-2, it gets to be a little tricky, if not just downright impossible. So this is where we get into the level 4 strategies. What you really want is to leverage investments, or where you don't have to manage physical properties, but you can just place money and get tax benefits out of that. That's called tax advantaged investing. And of course, tax shelters, which could be things like private foundations, donor advised funds, et cetera, et cetera. So they do work for W-2s, but again, these are kind of limited to the very top tier providers. And so it makes it hard to access. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to walk you through kind of a scatter chart on how these strategies are distributed. And you can actually ask about these different strategies on your calls with different providers. These are stuff that everybody knows about, your health savings account and your IRA and 401ks. Level 2 is where you start getting into those business deductions. And so you've got your home office and your S Corp and checkbook control IRA. Then of course we get up into the more advanced and kind of more real estate side of things, which is level 3, folks. And those are cost segs and opportunity zones and section 179 where you can expense out vehicles. And so of course those are super valuable, especially if you have a business or you're interested in real estate. But for W-2s especially, what you need to do is get into the level 4 providers. This is where you get into things like tax shelters. So you can see charitable remainder trusts, private pensions, private foundations. What we really like in this level is actually the depreciation plays around investments and your private foundations, specifically because these are what we call reactive strategies, which means that you can actually sit on your money all year long. You can wait for that perfect investment to come through. And even if it doesn't, you can still funnel money into a private foundation at the very last December 31st at 11:11 or 11:59. So this gives you the maximum amount of planning capability and of course still maximizes your tax savings. Once you've got the financial plan, now you actually need to execute it. This is the same kind of architecture that rich families use to manage all of their wealth. And what this looks like is tax shelters, asset protection, and estate planning. Now I've got the exact same kind of table laid out. Everybody's going to be able to talk to you about LLCs and maybe S Corps or C Corps. And of course, everybody's going to be talking to you about estate plans, although not all estate plans are made equal. Where you go from the local guys into the online specialists is at the asset protection level. If you have assets, if you have properties or investments or a business that you want to keep safe, you really do want to be working at least with an online provider that has done this with thousands of clients across the country, because they're going to know all kinds of different structures and strategies that your local provider will not know. And your local provider is going to tell you that they understand how all this works, but they won't. Some of these asset protection techniques are going to be things like anonymous trusts. You're going to have things like series LLCs, Delaware statutory trusts, Wyoming LLCs, hub and spoke models. Your local provider typically is only aware of a hub and spoke model and maybe, depending on the state, either like a Wyoming LLC or maybe like a series LLC if they're really advanced. So when you go to an online firm, they're just going to have a much broader level of information about how to do this, and they've got a lot more clients. You might spend more money, but the general rule of thumb for asset protection is how many years would it take you to replace everything if you were to lose it? If that costs more than the cost of the asset protection, just buy the damn asset protection. You are making so much money that a few critical moves can actually make you $30 million over the course of your career. This is where your mindset actually has to shift. Now, what separates the online providers from the family offices is family offices are going to have Wall Street level attorneys, and they're going to be able to actually understand the types of investments that you're playing in, not just real estate, but actually stocks, syndications, and they'll be able to set up specialized structures to make sure that you're doing everything right in those areas. And of course, they're also going to understand tax shelters like the private foundation or other tax shelters that can save you a ton of money. They're going to understand how those integrate with investments, how they integrate with your estate plan, with your generational wealth plan. This is where you get into the no joke level attorneys, extremely expensive. You're talking like $900 to $1,500 an hour pretty easily. But again, intelligence is everything at this level. And this is the kind of system that a wealthy family would have installed for themselves. So at the very bottom level, you'll see that we have a couple different types of insurance. You've got your liability insurance on maybe your vehicles or your properties or whatever. And then of course, you're going to have an umbrella insurance policy to act as your catch-all so that you have a double layer of coverage. Now, insurance is highly recommended for everyone, but Scott actually started his career as a litigation attorney, and he was suing insurance companies for rolling over on people where the payout exceeded their premiums and it just wasn't worth it. So they would fight those people to see if they could keep the money. Lawsuits are brutal. The whole name of the game is that you want to drag those out as long as possible, rack up as many billable hours as possible so that you'll just settle out of court. And so imagine your insurance provider rolling over on you while all of that is happening. It's not nice. You know, people rate lawsuits as one of the worst experiences of their life, right next to going through a divorce and losing a family member. Lawsuits are excruciatingly painful. You do not want to be in them. So of course, we always recommend that you start with insurance, but you want to have additional layers of safety. This is where you need to install anonymity at both your local level of ownership, like whatever county your house is in, and of course at the state level, it's going to look like you don't own anything. So when they look up your property, the owner might be some 123 Main Street trust, and the trust doesn't have to disclose its members. Or if they look up you as an individual, they're not going to see that you have any assets under your name. And lawsuits are a financial game. The attorney will sometimes take the lawsuit on pro bono, just totally free, because they get to split the winnings. When they go look you up, and it's going to take them them 60 seconds to look up your property, to look up your name and figure out how much money you're worth. If they look you up and they don't see anything, or they see a bunch of trusts, that is a major red flag for them that this is going to be difficult, time consuming. They may not win at all. And a lot of times they'll drop the case right there. You can't actually stop someone from suing you. If they hate your guts, they can still sue you, but you can disincentivize the financial motivation behind it. And that is really how you play asset protection. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to split your operations from your assets. And that means that all of your properties or stocks or anything valuable you hold in one company, and all of the contracts collecting rents, anything like that, you hold in a separate company. This means that this company doing all the business transactions, this is the one that's actually your face to the world. It's what's actually accumulating all of the risk. And this is what people are going to come after and try to sue. And if they do, you can just say, hey, well, this is just an empty shell company. It doesn't have anything in it. It's worthless. Where all of your assets are in this asset holding company that is hidden. Nobody even knows what it's called. They can't access it in any way. And that's what separation means. Then, of course, you're going to want to compartmentalize your assets. So if we go take a look at the asset holding company, this company may have a bunch of different assets in it. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to hold them all together inside of a single entity. Each asset should be held in its own compartment, so that even if they somehow find that company and they break into it and they sue one of the properties, the worst case scenario is that you only will lose that asset. It's not going to spill over into your entire portfolio. And if we scoot back to the situation where Scott's friend lost $3 million, what was happening was all of his assets were held in his personal name and they were all bundled together. And so when the lawsuit hit and he had a judgment against him, he had to sell one asset and it didn't cover the judgment. So he had to sell the next asset, then the next asset, until it wiped out $3 million. If you have $8 to $10 million in liquid net worth, then you will want to start looking into offshoring some of those assets. And this is just the ultimate layer of security and protection. These are very expensive. You're talking $30,000 to $50,000 just to set up and $15,000 to $30,000 per year to maintain. Otherwise, there are very good domestic strategies available that are much, much cheaper. All right, so let's just move on to estate planning. Now, this is how you protect your family, make sure that no matter what happens to you, everybody's good, and that, of course, all of this momentum and financial infrastructure that you've been building can pass down to the kids and to your loved ones. Most firms, especially local firms, are going to try sell you on a bare minimum estate plan that's going to have your will and your durable power of attorney and medical power of attorney and HIPAA authorization. It'll basically pass your assets on. And of course, if you become incapacitated, if you get into a car accident or get COVID or whatever happens, you're going to have someone that's going to be able to make financial decisions, medical decisions for you, that can see your financial record, your medical records. You definitely need these. You don't want to go into a situation where you're incapacitated and nobody can make financial decisions. Nobody can get at the money or pay the bills. Like, that is an elaborate use case, but that can and does happen to people, in which case you can lose your portfolio while you're incapacitated. What we recommend as full protection, this is really what we consider to be the minimum baseline of estate planning you should have. You need to also add in a pour over will. That's going to catch anything that you forget to put in your regular will. You're going to need a living trust. This is going to allow your family to essentially bypass probate. Probate is extremely expensive. It can be prolonged. This is where everybody fights. All of the creditors can see your assets passing through and get first dibs at them. And so you really want to get your family out of that kind of a situation. The living trust is what does that. And of course, you need a firm that's going to proactively help you maintain this estate plan. We see all the time people will go build out their estate plan one time, then it sits on the shelf for 10 or 15 years. And by the time they come around to us, the whole thing has to be reworked. It's basically garbage. Just don't do that. Just get a firm that's going to check in with you, pay a couple $100 a year, and make sure that that whole thing is running smoothly. If you're in the 8 to 10 million plus range, that is where you can start looking into other types of generational wealth strategies like charitable foundations or trusts, or of course, estate tax planning, where you will need specialized attorneys. Oftentimes they need to be local to your state of residence, and it's worth it because of the amount of tax savings on the line. Up until that point, probably not going to be worth it. And then last but not least, something to consider would be life insurance. Now, life insurance is essentially going to just replace your savings account with a different type of asset. And this is going to give you liquidity, so you can borrow from it just like you would with a savings account. It's going to increase your yield from a savings account up to maybe about 10% pre-tax. You're not going to have quite as big of fluctuations. It's going to have lower volatility. And of course, it comes with a death benefit. And so this is what you really want. If something should happen to you, your family is really well taken care of. And you can integrate this into your tax and your investing strategies. But of course, that is always optional. Once you've built out whatever structures that you need, now you need to actually fund your strategy. The goal of this is to automate that 6-figure annual income. And what you need to understand is how blended ROI works, how asset-backed businesses work, and of course, you need to access community vetting. Blended ROI is the concept that instead of just looking at, oh, I'm getting a 10% return, you need to actually add in the tax implications as well. That's how you go from 10 or 15% returns up into the 20, 25, or 30% returns, is when you factor in tax and investment returns. And also you want to factor in things like cash flow or net worth growth. This is why you would need to work work with a family wealth CFO, because there's a lot of numbers to crunch and you probably don't know all of the things that you would need to think about unless you go through the ringer a few times. So you want these analysts, these high intelligence, high awareness folks to crunch the numbers for you and develop plans that are going to show you how to cut your timeline by like 10 years. That's their whole job. Now let's just go in and take a look at some different types of investment strategists. Again, we're using the exact same model. Your level 2 is the local guys. These are going to be like your CFPs in your town. And so they're just going to sit on your money and play some basic investments for you, and they'll get you maybe like 10% returns. Now you've got your online providers. These guys are going to get you into some additional strategies, the level 3s, and they'll be able to get you up to that 12% return. And then of course you've got your family office teams, and they can really do some serious damage. This is why you pay these guys the big bucks, because they're going to get you into 16% returns up to, we routinely actually can get into the 30 plus range each year, depending on how you allocate your assets and your risk profile. So let's just take a look at what these 3 different tiers will do. Everybody's going to talk to you about public market stuff, about stocks and bonds. This is the safest place to play, and there's a huge difference between the level of quality. Your average CFP is just going to throw your money into some kind of a mutual fund or index. They're not going to be doing like reverse butterfly trading on your behalf, right? That's too sophisticated. Most of them can't do that kind of stuff. Where the local guys are going to tap out almost immediately is anything beyond stocks. So as soon as you get into crypto and Forex, they're going to tap out and they're going to say, oh, it's way too risky, which actually is probably true. But at the same time, your online guys, your family offices, they will actually take a look at that. They'll have an awareness of that industry. They'll know the low risk, high risk plays. They'll be able to inform you about all of that. And of course, then you also want them to talk to you about real estate. Even as W-2s, you can get into things like short-term rentals where you can actually get the tax savings. And so you want someone to help advise you on these different types of alternative assets that go beyond your regular public market stuff. And so that is where working with an online provider can actually start generating quite a bit more money for you over time if you just make that one simple move. Where the online providers stop and the family offices really take over is where you get into what we call private market deals. And these are things like real estate syndications where you can actually crowdfund things like apartment complexes, self-storage units, or of course, energy and machinery kind of stuff like oil and gas equipment, car wash equipment, truck wash equipment. These are really powerful deals. They have huge tax benefits. They don't require active management, and they can come with really great returns, including just annual cash flow. This is where you need a very sophisticated investment team to make sure that you don't get scammed. But then if they do their job and you get into the right investments, man, you can make a ton of money. And if you go look at groups like, say, Tiger 21, that is a group of the richest folks in America. They'll actually publish how they allocate their portfolio, and a massive allocation is inside of these private market deals, inside of real estate and other types of syndications. So that's a very important class to add to your portfolio. And most folks just coming out of peak 1 going into peak 2, most folks don't even know that exists. So let's talk about how you structure out your investment portfolio. At the very bottom, you've got all these different types of deals that you would need to vet. Even just trading your own stocks, you're going to need to understand the companies, understand the market trends, understand the economics, understand the news cycle. Same thing with bonds, although it's a little bit easier. If you're doing real estate, you need to understand the local economics of long-term rentals, short-term rentals, how to hack appreciation, do HELOCs. On the syndication side, you'd need to know your oil and gas machinery or your car washes. You could specialize in one of those, but what you really want is to specialize in all of them. You want to have the best buffet that you possibly can. And so this is where we would get into how do you start structuring that out. There are guys that already know how all of this stuff works. And if you can just be friends with them, if you can pay them, they can actually give you huge amounts of information and dramatically reduce your timeline to learning how all of this works. Over on your public market stuff, you've got certified financial planners, your CFPs. These guys, that's their whole job, is to kind of watch those stocks. They're going to know a bunch of cool tips and tricks that you may not be aware of, and they can immediately improve your results. Now, on your real estate side, you need a real estate buyer. This is someone that really understands the markets and where things are moving and how real estate works. And of course, on your syndication side, you need to speak with the actual operators that specialize in car washes or in oil and gas drilling operations so that they can break down all of those mechanics for you. But the problem is, of course, that you can always get lied to by these people. And so you go up to another level where you actually get into what we call deal clubs or RIAs. So an RIA can give you some different tools to make your trades even safer. And the same thing with the deal club. This is where a bunch of investors come together. All of the people around you are also trying not to get burned. And so everybody's sharing information. Some of the guys have already invested with that syndication operator or in that area, and they can give you some insider information. And this may not save you, but every piece of information you can scoop up makes you that much safer. So it's worth paying for this intel because one good deal can really be life-changing. At the very top of this structure, what you really need is your professional team, your chief financial officer, your certified public accountant, it should be like a CFA, a CIO, your chief investment officer. There's a whole bunch of different roles up here. We only have a few listed, but you want a really robust investment team that understands the tax implications information, that understands how it ties into your personal financial trajectory and goals, that understands those deals specifically and how to structure deals and how to vet the deals and how to take a look at these different operators to see if somebody's trying to bullshit you, who can plug you into a deal network with community vetting. You need all of those things in place to really tackle this investment in the smartest way possible, where you have the lowest risk of being burnt. And then you need to still spend some time talking to all the experts, taking a look at everything, and making a decision based on that. As the CEO of your own wealth company, this is the number one function that you have. It's vetting investments, and it's making sure you've got the right people on your team. And if you do your job well, you've got like $30 million on the line. So you get the massive CEO payout. That is basically how we've discovered the absolute best way to structure the investment side of things. This is going to do all the heavy lifting for you. And that way you're not in the weeds trying to vet your own deals or trying to guess which operator is correct. Let's just take a look at one example for how you can simply improve your stock performance. So if you're managing stocks yourself, on average, over 10 years, you're going to make about 10% returns. Now, obviously, sometimes it's really high, and then sometimes it's going to be really low. What happens with most folks is that you can do really well in certain types of markets, but just emotionally, the ups and downs, you're going to hit phases where you're just not temperamentally equipped to handle it. And this is where you actually reset that average down. Now, just by moving your stuff over to a professionally managed registered investment advisory, you can generate an extra 30% over a 10-year average. These types of structures and professionals are getting 14%, and they do it just with some very simple common sense strategies that I'm sure they'd love to walk you through. Things like active rebalancing. You don't just like set it and forget it. And of course, you want to read the market and just make sure that you're protecting yourself from big crashes. Now, these guys will charge 1%, but still that's an extra 3% or an extra 30% total, going from 10% to 13% that you can make just by putting your money with the right team. That looks like a 3% increase, but when you get the right CPA, the right investment advisor on your stocks, if you get into a private market deal, if you prevent yourself from having a lawsuit, as you put all these little moves into place, it starts to add up into some serious momentum. And then if you do that year after year after year, you really start to outpace the rest of the pack. When you build this out for yourself, you're going to go through and you're going to talk to all these experts. And let's say you do a fantastic job. You pick all the right teams. Everybody's in agreement. Everything just runs perfectly smooth. And then you've done it. 1 year in the books. Are you going to do it next year? How are you going to maintain the whole thing? How are you going to keep that momentum building and growing over time? This is the key thing that a lot of people forget. They'll do it one time. They'll get their strategies. They'll set it and forget it. And you end up leaving a ton of money on the table. When we take a look at the market, here's how you're actually going to execute this and what you would have to pay. The do-it-yourselfer column, this is where you are going to need to assemble your own teams, your own CPA, your own attorney, your own deal club, etc. Then you have what's called a family office. In this exact diagram, we have a multifamily office. I'll walk you through those in a little bit more detail on the next slide. And then, of course, you've got what it looks like to work with us. When it comes to developing a financial plan, you should expect to be paying $10,000 to $15,000. Plus, a lot of times, they're going to want you to do some type of a tax split. This means that they might take 30 or 50% of your tax savings. The multifamily office, and with us, all of that's included. Then you're going to actually have to go out and execute that plan. That means you're going to have to build whatever legal structures are required. Anderson Advisors is a really fantastic nationwide firm. And if you just kind of price out what it would look like to build the kind of stuff that we build for most of our clients, you're looking at about $25,000. That's for like a tax shelter, an asset holding company, an operating company, and an estate plan. For a multifamily office, you're going to be paying about the same amount because that's actually outsourced. Typically, the multifamily offices are going to give you legal strategy, but not the execution side. And then, of course, with Royal, we bundle that all into our price as well. Now, funding your strategy, you could join a group like Tiger 21, which is going to cost $30,000 per year for access to their deal flow. Really, a better example might be something like the Lifestyle Investor, which is $50,000 a year and includes group coaching. So we actually have in-house deal coaches, and actually it's one-on-one coaching. That's up at $50,000. We played a little conservative here just to not have too much sticker shock, but this is really what you're going to find out in the wild if you go get good options. Now, with a multifamily office, typically they're going to give you access to 2 or 3 deals. They're going to go source those for you. And then, of course, when it comes to growing your wealth, when it comes to repeating the system year after year after year, the do-it-yourselfer model means that you're going to have to go find the right team and run that team year after year. You're really, truly going to be CEO and COO. You're going to be the operator running the machine as well as trying to set the vision. It's going to be exhausting. It's not going to be fun. But of course, you can do that to save yourself a little bit of money up front. If you run the multifamily route, or if you work with us, we will actually just run those ecosystems for you. So when you're looking at the actual cost, the do-it-yourselfer route is going to cost you like $60,000 plus, no problem. The multifamily office typically is going to be around $250,000 a year. Now they're going to take this in different kinds of creative ways. They're going to take it out of like a performance fees on your stock investments. They might charge you $50,000 up front, but that is actually what you're going to be paying over time is the $250,000. And then of course with Royal, we have a totally different model that is significantly cheaper. When we take a look at family offices specifically, these are your level 4 providers. typically. Although what you can see here is that some of them actually present themselves as if they're a family office, but they kind of skimp on some features. So let's just go through the different types of family offices that you're going to run into. You're going to have fractional family offices, you're going to have multifamily offices, and single family offices. So a single family office, just imagine like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. Those guys will have their entire team just dedicated only to their personal finances, just one family. A multifamily is where you've got guys making $50, $100 million a year, and they pool their resources together to in-house a team for, let's say, like 3 families, 5 families, 10 families. A fractional family office is where you distribute that over hundreds or thousands of clients. The way they are able to do this, of course, is the level of depth that they go into these different categories. So in the planning phase, the tax and financial planning, a fractional family office may not get you into private market investments. They may not get you into tax shelters. And, they're not really going to be looking outside of public market on the investment side. And so they're really going to give you like level 3 strategies. Same thing a lot of times with the multifamily. They're just not going to go as deep. Some will and some won't. Single family, obviously, you're going to get access to everything. With Royal, you do get true level 4 planning. When it comes to building your shelters, all of the family offices will outsource this to a boutique firm. And so you'll be paying full ticket typically. Whereas with Royal, we actually have all of the legal fulfillment in-house. We still will charge wholesale pricing on that just because everybody's got different needs. But all of our stuff, all of our execution is in-house with the strategy team. And so that just gives us much tighter execution. And just so you kind of understand what that means, we have a paralegal team that is dedicated and specialized in real estate. We started our firm as asset protection for real estate investors. We have over 3,000 real estate clients, and we work in all of the counties across the US. And there's 3,000 different counties in the US. So we specialize down at that level of detail in conjunction with our strategy teams. So we're talking about very serious levels of execution here, and all of that is in-house. When it comes to funding your strategy, again, I had already called out that the fractional family offices a lot of times are just going to focus on public market kind of stuff. And the difference here is that instead of making 30% on your deals, you're going to make 10%. And that is going to have a dramatically different financial trajectory for you and your family. Now, at the multifamily offices, they are, of course, going to present you with some private market deals typically, but it's going to be fewer. They're going to be a little bit more curated for you and your family. But again, it's just not going to be a full pipeline of deals for you to choose from. With the single family office, of course, that is completely irrelevant. They have more than enough money to get into the best back-end deals that actually are totally exclusive, and normal people just can't even access those. And then, of course, with Royal, you get access to our private network of deals. So this is not only a bunch of different deal clubs, but on top of it, it is our own investment team vetting and sourcing deals that we would also put our money in. So it's a blended model. You'll have tons of deal flow, and you'll have highly vetted deals all mixed together. You'll be able to see which is which. It's really the best option on the market short of a single family office. When it comes to repeating this system year after year, you can kind of just see what you should expect in terms of how much money are you making with each of these teams. And the fractional family office, like I said, is going to be 5 to 12%. Family offices a lot of times are designed to be kind of conservative and protect your wealth. They assume that you already have a lot of wealth. You just want to maintain it, maybe grow it a little bit, but really play it very cautiously. Multifamily offices, they will have access into private deals typically in real estate, so they can get you up into the 10 to 15 range. Single family offices, of course, very high, 10 to 25%, sometimes even higher, depending on who their connections are. And of course, Royal would be right in that same category. We are actually the only firm in the nation designed specifically for folks who are looking to grow their wealth, not just maintain it, not just bulletproof it. We can do all of that too, but to really take the step up into the next tier of wealth, to go from a $300,000 or a $500,000 annual earner into a 25 million net worth family. That is what we specialize in. You're not going to find anybody else that does that kind of thing. So that is our bread and butter. Now, again, what it's going to cost you, the fractional family office, the reason people do this is it's actually affordable. They can get in for $50,000 a year, and that makes them feel like, hey, the prestige of a family office, it's worth it, let's do this. But again, you're leaving a lot on the table. A multifamily office, this is typically reserved for $25 million plus earners because it costs $250,000 a year. They may take it out of your stock portfolio, they may take it out of the deal flow, they may take it out of different things, right? They're going to be creative about how they bill you, but that's typically what it's going to cost. And then, of course, your single family office, you're looking at $750,000, $1 million per year, and this is why only the richest of the rich actually can afford that type of thing. You're going to pay for it. So, of course, Royal is cheaper than all of these options and has better service than everything but the single family office. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to work with a team that specializes in income and net worth growth, specifically for folks in the 0 to 5 million net range. All right, so let's just talk about how do we actually take all of these concepts and theories and boil them down into actual hard deliverables. In general, you're going to go through a strategic design phase within the first 2 weeks. You'll also get access to the investments. People take anywhere from 1 to 3 months before they place an investment. That's totally normal. So you'll get early access, but then we do expect you to go through the process, to run the calculator, to set up your coaching sessions, and really do your due diligence so that you're not just like whipping money around. It is ultimately on you to place good investments. We can't do that for you. That is your job. At the end of the design phase, you will receive a tax and portfolio plan. This is going to kind of break down all the strategies for you and give you the options. We will actually get you into the legal build where we will fulfill in-house. Typically, we can fulfill like 95% of what everybody needs, unless you come in with very specialized or high net worth types of needs, in which case we have a large support network. Once everything's built, we run into the proactive support phase. And this is where you go into, over on the right-hand side, you'll see these bubbles, the weekly calls. We have office hours and training calls and community investment calls that you can jump on and ask questions and meet other folks like yourself. Of course, we have flex hours and flex meetings that you can get into on demand. And we do have quarterly reviews where we will proactively reach out and try to get you into what we think is most important during that time period, whether that's a legal review, tax review, portfolio review. Like I'm shooting this in Q4. Right now, we've been calling all of our elite clients and making sure that they understand all of their tax savings options. They've formed their entities. They've set up the bank account. They've transferred the funds. If they've got questions, we connect them with the CPA, right? All of that is being handled for them so that they are guaranteed to get the savings if they just follow the process, and we're even helping them follow the process. All right, so let's just dive through what each of these look like in practice. So the strategic design is going to walk you through a series of different meetings. You're going to have first a roadmap meeting. It's going to cover your tax strategy. You're going to meet with the CPA and the CFO. Then you're going to go into a legal strategy meeting where we're going to talk about what structures that you actually need to execute on that financial plan. You're also going to be able to get to jump into like deal coaching, syndication coaching. If you don't have those things, if you're not interested, you can skip them. But we have a whole slew of different strategy meetings so that you can come in and get up to speed very quickly and design the correct strategy. At the very beginning, we're going to give you investment access as well. This will be access to our deal network. You can see here, we kind of have grayed out the different names, but you'll get to see all the deal clubs, all the investment options. You'll get access to our calculators about how you model out those deals. And of course, you'll get access to be able to go talk to the syndication operators themselves, as well as our deal coaches. And so we'll orient you into what you need to be looking for, how you need to talk to these people, how to model all this out. You'll be able to go back and forth with us either in a one-on-one setting or in a group setting. Once we go through the design phase, you'll get into the tax and portfolio plan. Initially on the call, we will build out like a CFO model where we will help forecast the different types of moves that you can make and how they're going to impact your finances over time. This is how we show you how to cut a financial timeline from 20 years down to 10 years. And we've actually even retired people on their first call just by showing them all of the levers that they can pull, although that is pretty rare, but it does happen. Now, from there, we will deliver the report to you that's going to have a whole bunch of different options with the tax implications. This is actually a much more robust plan than most firms would have because it has all of the CFO financial modeling in addition to the tax strategies. After that plan is delivered, we'll get into the legal build where you have an operating company, an asset holding company, multiple assets held in their own individualized compartments. And of course, everything rolls over into your estate plan, into the living trust. That's what's going to help you avoid probate. Of course, you may have other structures on here, 401ks or private foundations. Everybody kind of has different setups, but this is the kind of stuff that we'll build in-house. And then of course, if you need specialized support outside of that, we do have a large custom solution network that we can plug you in with depending on what you need. Now, you get into meetings with attorneys, CPAs, deal coaches, etc. But of course, we will also be reaching out to make sure that you are following the process, that you have an up-to-date strategy, that you are in compliance, that there's no loose ends. We're going to make sure that you can just sleep easy knowing that everything's been taken care of and that you are on the most optimized path. And then last but not least, we are going to introduce you to Royal Life. And this is Scott's area that he's really exploring all kinds of different ways to improve the quality of life. Now, he's also written a book on different mindset and emotional mastery techniques and how to really get execution out of life. And he does have a mastermind available. That's where you can actually come on out, enjoy spending some time with him at his personal retreat center, get to explore whatever cool things he's working on, go ride some jet skis, go hiking, enjoy private chef meals, or, whatever he's up to those days. That is a chance to kind of connect with him and really rapidly accelerate your life. That concludes our presentation. If you're interested in working with us or learning more about these systems, definitely click the link below. Our process has been designed with over 3,000 different clients nationwide, all 50 states. We are experts at what we do. We have a very robust process, and we're more than happy to share all this information with you and guide you through the steps. If you decide that this isn't the right fit for you, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it, and best of luck on your financial journey.
I had a big tax bill potentially coming up, and I was starting to try to mitigate things, but I needed some actual tax mitigation help, legal protection or asset protection, and then estate planning. CPAs typically just punch in buttons and numbers. There was no tax strategy involved.
I thought, it's probably better to get advice from an attorney who's doing this and really knows this much better than myself.
I just don't have a set playbook. I was really concerned about if we forget to file something. I just was worried that we might kind of screw up operationally.
That was one of the reasons I reached out to you.
If you think about the variety of things that can happen, and the next thing you know, you get slapped with a lawsuit. Talking with your team, we definitely got the sense that this wasn't your first rodeo.
I knew that you were an expert in it.
Everything was explained to me clearly in layman's terms that I could understand.
It was very educational. Everything was pretty much laid out.
Really, everything was learned through this company. The information is there, and I think that's probably the thing that made me most comfortable. It was very transparent through all of your kind of videos, testimonials, all the information that you had on your website. I felt, okay, this guy has done it before. It's not your first rodeo, you know?
You walked us through a visual. I'm a very visual guy, so I needed to see, here's the LLC and here's the asset inside the LLC. There was no research needed.
And we decided to go with your company because you guys would still answer everything. You guys were very fast with emails when I had questions.
You just really laid out what needed to happen, what your process was, and what I'd be getting out of it. Made it all real simple.
All the interactions throughout have all been great, professional. If I send an email, ask for something, response time has been great.
Royal Legal Solutions team became my own team. They've really surpassed my expectations.
The biggest thing is peace of mind that's been provided with knowing I've got some asset protection, knowing that I've got someone else to lean on when I've got questions. Anytime we have a question, response is always within 24 hours, if not sooner, in detail, and really no stone left unturned.
Overall, I'm happy so far with everybody I've worked with.
Working with Royal Legal Solutions has allowed me to that peace of mind, number one. Number two, to really consolidate my time.
Definitely a 10.
I'd say a 10.
I would say 10.
I'd say that's a definite 10.
Oh, absolutely a 10.
10. I guess 10 because we already have referred somebody to you.
Absolutely recommend you guys to anybody I know.
Highly recommend working with Royal Legal Service.
10. I trust you. You guys are golden.